Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome from my side as well. I hope you're enjoying it. It's quite interesting. I think the next speaker will probably be a lot more interesting. It is, as Andre said, Dr. Eve. Dr. Maria Wasserman is a renowned and internationally trained sexologist, accredited couple and sex therapist, and sexual medical consultant in private practice and author. As the founder of the Dr. Eve brand, she is a well-known media personality, having a daily presence on radio, television, or print media. She's an academic who teaches sexual medicine at the UCT Medical School, is published in a number of academic journals, and presented papers at a number of international scientific meetings. Marlene is Africa's regional secretary for the World Association of Sexual Health and an international sexual rights activist. She's a temporary advisor to the World Health Organization and an attendee commissioner of the Statute of Women, United Nations. She's an active member of a number of international associations. As a passionate proponent of sexual health and rights, Marlene practices forensic sexology, serving as an expert in medico-legal cases. She also trains healthcare practitioners and providers to integrate sexual health into their management plans and educate the public to their right to access the service. Cyber infidelity has captured her attention. Her just released book, Cyber Infidelity, The New Seduction, by Human and Rousseau, is pioneering work into the under-researched world of cyber infidelity. Maria brings you fascinating findings that are sure to captivate your imagination and get you to reconsider your online behavior and marriage. Marlene is positioned to be the global thought leader on cyber infidelity as she expands this work into the world. You can find Marlene daily on her websites, www.dreve.co.za, on Facebook and on Twitter. She's unashamedly a lover of social media. Marlene, welcome very much.
I'm sure you're all starving by now, right? The last thing you want to do is to think about sexuality. So there's some chess pieces in front of you, which are full of sugar and terribly unhealthy, but I suggest that you kind of feed yourself while you listen to me. Oh, I've lost a shoe. Like Cinderella at the ball. Forgive me when I just picked that up again. I just want to thank you, Jay. This is my book. You'll find it outside. I want to thank you, Jay, for inviting me to be part of this discussion today on men's health. It's actually a different kind of platform. I've spoken at UJ a number of times, and it's a different platform. Normally, I would be on the platform, on the panel, talking about, as you can hear, sexual medicine, sexual health, sexual rights. But somehow, I find myself in a huge career shift where I am seduced 24/7 into this online world. And this is, the outcome of this is my book, of course. So it's kind of like a circle for me because I started out as a social worker back in the day. I did a master's in that, and then I did family therapy, and I was kind of working with relationships, and then I got into working with sex because people wanted to talk about sexuality, and then I got into sexual medicine because that's what, was where the research was, and I now find myself back into the fascination of relationships, but in a very different world. So remember, go back to the days, because once upon a time, a boy and a girl met. And this boy and girl were young, they were in their early 20s, and they fell in love, or really they wanted to have sex. And in order to have sex, they needed to form something significant called a marriage. So they got married, and they promised, as they stood under the religious and legal structures, that they would only love each other for the rest of their lives, that they would have a formal agreement of sexual fidelity and commitment only to the one person for their whole lives, and that they would have practiced monogamy, meaning they would only have this one partner for the rest of their lives. And they went into this structure, the script of what was expected of young couples to do at that time, which was to have a baby, have a house, work your whole life, and be happily ever after married. Things changed enormously from that model when there was the pill in the 60s, where women had more sexual freedom and women began to be more sexually liberated, and even more so in the 70s and the 80s when there was a feminist revolution, and more significantly when there was a gay, lesbian, transgender activist movement, which moved the model of monogamy significantly into a very different structure. And that was where women began to claim their sexuality and their right to be expressing their sexuality and had the control over their reproductive health because of the oral contraceptive. This changed more and more the model of what we expected as, and the word normal was used, at what was expected as being the normal structure of what every couple should be having. But as women got into the workplace, something shifted as well. Because of the opportunity that they had to access other partners, they began to cheat. And infidelity began to rise and rise. At the same time, with the liberation of gay, lesbian, LGBTQI movement, there was also a growing need for another alternative model of relationship, namely same-sex connecting, marrying, fighting to be married with each other. And at the same time, with divorce, family structures began to change. No longer was this the nuclear family of what we call the mononormative, heteronormative family, the monogamous heterosexual family living together. The structure began to change, families began to change, and suddenly it was more about single women raising children, living without fathers. And they became the most acceptable, most common form of relationship. So it began to be recognized that this model of monogamy doesn't work for us. And people began seeking other forms of non-monogamy, which began to be cheating, which we know is incredibly harmful, very painful experience. Now, as a couple and sex therapist, I've been doing this work for like nearly 30 years. I understand infidelity. It's kind of the bread and butter of my work. I understand that this is an outcry, it is a result of trying to fit and squeeze into this monogamous model that society has given us and said, this is where you have to be happy. The fact is that 50% of people are not happy in that model. And the rest of people, the other 50%, are trying really hard and work really hard at staying there because of children, because of finance, and because of many other factors. But this model doesn't work. It doesn't feel comfortable, and people act out with cheating. So infidelity has been part of what I've always worked with. Things turned on their heads completely when the internet came onto the scene. Technology has revolutionized the way that we engage from a sexual and a relationship point of view. How I got involved with cyber infidelity was when a company, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with right now, called Ashley Madison, right? Right? I'm not going to ask who's been on it, but you've all heard about it. Ashley Madison came to South Africa in 2012. And when the then CEO was in this country, Noel Biederman, he was on radio, did a lot of promotional work, and I was on radio chasing him and saying, get out the country, this is ridiculous. We don't need multiple partners. We don't need a website that's going to encourage people to be unfaithful, because the logo of the website is, life is short, have an affair. It was his business model, which was a very successful business model until it got hacked. So I was really opposed to this because of our HIV, because of our gender-based violence and our HIV, that are companies that I didn't think that multiple partnerships was a good thing to be promoting. I was kind of naive. This was 3 years ago. I was really naive. And at that time, in my therapy room, because that's where I spend my day as a clinician, I began to get women coming into my therapy room. And these women were sitting on my couch and saying, I went onto the site because I was kind of curious. And I started cyber chatting, cyber sexting, cyber flirting. They didn't have a language for it then. But I began chatting to these men and to women and found that I feel so much happier in my life, that I'm feeling more optimistic, my self-esteem has increased, and I feel happier. And I'm having more sex with my in real life partner. And I'm going offline and I'm having sex with these men that I meet online, and I don't feel guilty. Do you think I'm committing infidelity? And it got me to ponder as women kept coming into my therapy room around this. Then the couples started coming in. Before that, actually, before the couples started coming, I started writing about it and talking about it on radio. Noel Biederman came to me and said to me, I think we need to work together. And I said, I want to work with you. And he said to me, here is my database, 39 million people in 46 different countries. You go. What do you want to do? I said, I want to do research into cyber infidelity, which is what the book is all about. So when I signed on, I then started getting couples coming into my therapy room, having disclosure. There was exposure then. The moment that there was a find out, the one partner would find out through the mobile phone, which is the most common way of being discovered, that there was this conversation going on with one partner, with somebody else in this unknown, unguarded world. The partner would find it out, and she would be, or he would be, in absolute tears of devastation and accuse the partner of infidelity. And they would come into my room, and the tagline of my book is, "It's not that I'm having sex or anything." They would sit in front of me and they would say, "I'm devastated." She would be absolutely crying, or he would be the one who would be crying and say, "She or he has committed infidelity. I'm devastated." And he would say, "But I've never met this person. I've never had real sex with this person. I don't know why you're so upset." We come from a society that we all understand what the word sex means. Sex is an exchange of bodily fluids in real life. This wasn't happening online. They were chatting, they were flirting, they were even sending naked photos of each other, but they didn't define it as infidelity. I then had to question myself as a clinician to think, is this really infidelity? And that's when my research began. So what my research methodology was that I created 2 profiles on Ashley Madison. I went in as a married man, and I went in as a single woman. And I sat on the site for 2 years, going through the process of cyber infidelity, really understanding what it feels like to cyber flirt, cyber sex, cyber fall in love, cyber go offline, meet people, and really for the sake of research, I mean, I had to do this, right? And I got a real in-depth idea of what cyber infidelity is all about and how one gets caught and trapped and seduced into this online world. I then created 5 surveys, which I put into Ashley Madison with the 5 different questions that I had, which were, what is cyber infidelity? Is it something that we should just accept because it's part of technology? Is it really infidelity? Does it really hurt us? And most significantly, I wanted to know, what does it say about our marriages today, and what is it that we want out of marriage today? Those were my 5 questions that I asked. I also created a site for qualitative data called mycybersecret.com, invited people to post their narratives around their cyber secrets onto the site, from which I drew a lot of information, which is all in the book, a lot of beautiful narrative stories around that. And I did a huge amount of literature review, which there was very little about that. So what were my findings? I found, as I lived on the site and as I was dealing with couples all the time, that first of all, as a clinician, I was completely ill-equipped to be dealing with what was going on in cyber infidelity. It's very different from in real life infidelity because of technology. Technology is what drives our behavior. It's called the AAA engine. It's affordable, it's accessible, it's anonymous. And what that means is that we don't have to pay to buy a new outfit or for dinner or to catch a cab to go anywhere. It's in your hand all the time. It's accessible to you 24/7. So the interaction and the platforms are there. There's a variety of platforms that are available for us to keep chatting, keep connecting all the time. And you can be anonymous. So you develop a different persona where you really feel so much happier about yourself. People were telling me, and my research kept showing, that their online relationships were happier, more satisfying than their in-real-life relationships. So the AAA engine, the technology itself, makes us all vulnerable to being online. We then have to question, what is cyber infidelity? And the clinical definition of that is when 2 people who are in what they would define as a committed relationship get into synchronous or asynchronous communication, meaning in real time, like in WhatsApp, asynchronous being email communication, with somebody else or with a group of other people, and they begin to engage in conversation or sending images whilst keeping it a secret, and all the time knowing that they're breaking the traditional vows of fidelity, commitment, and monogamy. So some of the research findings which were completely fascinating for me were breaking down the stereotypes of gender, of men and women. Men have always been the ones to almost feel entitled, and we as society have given men the entitlement of having infidelity in their lives. Women seem to swallow, to absorb it, because this is what men do. This is a message that's been passed down since man and woman ever kind of were born into this world. Men are entitled and women are shamed and slutted and given a bad reputation for ever calling themselves or ever being found out to have cheated. There is disequity in how men and women are treated around extramarital relationships. What I found online, one of the most surprising things were with the power of women. That women's sexuality came to the front, that women are the ones in the space which is unregulated and ungated, who are provocative, they're hunting. They were the ones who went, for me as a man, a married man online, who were like saying, I want to see your pictures. I couldn't have a photo of myself. I want to see your picture before I have sex with you. I want to see your genitals. I want to see your penis size before I have sex with you. The men were like way more gentle, they wanted to chat. The reasons why these people go online, why we all go online, They're not looking for an affair, which is very different from in real life infidelity, where you know that you say, I'm unhappy, he doesn't understand me, my wife doesn't get me, he doesn't have enough sex with me. These people are online, we are online, these people are us, we're online, and we are chatting, cheating, because we can, because we don't define it as infidelity. We are not emotionally or sexually unhappy in our relationships. These are men and women who are saying, I am sexually connected, I feel emotionally happy when I'm with my partner, because that was part of the survey that I asked. So that is not the motivation for going online. Motivation for men going online was no strings attached sex, pure curiosity, the willingness to just to explore. These men were not looking for emotional relationships or significant romance. The woman's motivation, no strings attached sex, more satisfying sex. And when I asked them, what is satisfying sex for you? Anyone guess what women say is more satisfying sex? Everyone's a little shy. So what, yeah? Correct. They were asking for kissing and cuddling. Now you would imagine that they go offline with an anonymous person and they can have any kind of sex that they want because they've spent an inordinate amount of time chatting online, sharing fantasies and disclosing maybe body parts of themselves, but they've probably shared more online with the fantasy lover than they have with their real life partner. And you'd imagine they'd get into this hotel room and there'd be this wild, porn-driven, kinky kind of sex. Oh, no. They just want kissing and cuddling, which led me to understand what's not happening in real life relationships today. The lack of intimacy is there. There's an intimacy of a different kind. So I then looked at very much what it is that we're looking for in our relationships today. And that's kind of the extension of my work now. Now that I understand what cyber infidelity, now that I'm going around, I've just come back from a wonderful book tour, which took me, and conference presentation, which took me from Oslo to Lisbon, to Iceland, to New York, where my book was really fantastically well received. I'm now moving and educating, I'm beginning to educate clinicians around how to integrate working with cyber infidelity in their therapy rooms. I'm now moving into looking at what's called non-monogamy, because I've placed cyber infidelity into the model of non-monogamy. The conference that I've just attended in Lisbon, presented at Lisbon, was called the First Non-Monogamies and Contemporary Intimacies Conference, which is very fascinating. And what it's telling us is that there are other models of relationship that people are teaching us they want. The mono-heteronormative relationship no longer works for us, and we want to explore other ways of living. We still want, and this is all my Ashley Madison respondents proved to me, we still believe in the traditional values of monogamy and fidelity and commitment. These are people sitting on a dating site for married people, they are married, and we still, from an evolutionary point of view, we hang on instinctively to those needs, to have that commitment, to feel special, to be valued by one person, to have this marriage, this construct or institution of marriage, but we want in it with more than one person at the same time. We feel that we can be sexually faithful to more than one person at the same time. So the model is absolutely different right now. I have wonderful examples of how this is coming into my therapy room and how it's incredibly exciting and very challenging for me as a therapist and for people who are honest and brave enough to say, actually, I don't want to be in this marriage. Actually, there's other things that I want to do. We are valuing happiness as a personal value. We are valuing the quotient of happiness more than just love. I'm going to come back to give you some examples of non-monogamy that's emerging. But when I asked people what their expectation of marriage is today, and I'm curious to know what you would say. What is the first expectation you have around your marriage today? I don't even use the word marriage or relationship anymore. I just call it situations or connections or attachments, because, what is a relationship? I don't know. Wait for a couple to sit down and tell me what their status is. What would you say is the thing you most expect from a marriage today? Because people are still getting married. The institution still exists. Commitment. Security. So what happened to sex? What happened to love? In the 60s, we got married for love. That's always been held up as the reason why we should get married. Commitment is something instinctively, as I said, that we do feel, we take for granted should be there. So what my respondents told me, and I had 62,600 respondents, what they told me, their primary function of a marital partner, their expectation, is friendship. Friendship, companionship. So we've moved into a companionship type of marriage expectation. And we're taking our sexuality and we're wanting to express it elsewhere because, let's be honest, it's really hard to be married, to be in a significant relationship with the expectations that come along with that. It's incredibly difficult, challenging, and we don't want to do that. We want to be conflict avoidant, and what being online gives us is playfulness, imagination, a huge amount of fantasy, and a huge amount of conflict avoidance. We don't want to be doing that in our real lives. So how do we marry the two? How do we have an online life, which we all do have, while still having a significant relationship with somebody else? Besides the woman standing out for me as being really aha moments of fascination in terms of the research, the other thing that I've learned the most about is communication, and how people communicate online, and how differently that is on how we communicate with a real-life partner. So I always have this image of two people lying in a bed together, and the one's on the iPad and the other one's on an iPhone, and one's either playing Candy Crush, right? I can't believe how many people play that. Candy Crush, I think it's called, or gaming, which is one of the most popular activities we do online, and the other person's kind of Googling, but they're also chatting online, because on, not Candy Crush, but on many of the gaming sites, for example, there's a chat room, and in that chat room, the chat goes. And what I found out with our online behavior is that it goes from, in a heartbeat, in a matter of a number of seconds, and please look at my TED Talk, because there's a beautiful slide that I have illustrating that, how it goes from, hey, I really like the tweet that you've just sent, I love the tweet you've just sent from the UJ meeting that you're at right now. And the next thing will be, thanks, I looked at your profile, I think that your work's really interesting. Hey, I really like the shoes you were wearing. Thank you. And the next comment will be, well, I'd really like to see what's under those shoes. Oh, really? Well, I'd really like to see what's under that shirt. Now, this is a complete stranger, and in half a heartbeat, you've unbuttoned your shirt and you've exposed yourself. Within 1 to 4 days, people are going offline and meeting. Within 1 to 16 days is the average time, from first chat to meeting offline. The reason for that is because there's something called hyper-personal intimacy that has developed online. That we have a heightened sense of self-disclosure online compared to how we are in our real-life relationship. In our real-life relationship, there are risks. There's fear. We hear about the gender-based violence. We hear about the risks around negotiating condoms, negotiating parenting, partnering, parents, friends. There's so much negotiation, domesticity. And online, you go straight to the heart of you. What are you dreaming about? What do you fantasize about? What are you thinking about? That you feel like this person is more known to you and you've self-disclosed more than you do to your partner who lies next to you in bed every night. Which is why the pain of finding out that your partner's committed cyber infidelity is double to what your in real life infidelity is all about. In real life infidelity, we know the pain of that, the betrayal, the sense of humiliation, the incredible pain that comes with trying to restructure a new relationship. Online, when you get found out, when your device gets found out, when you begin to read those messages, because you don't see him or her, or him, doing the secretary over the desk. You don't get to see that. But online, you get to see the language, the rich descriptive language that your partner's using. You lying in bed with a woman who says she's never interested in being sexual, and you get online and you see her text messages of how she is more sexual with this partner, be it man or woman, that she's ever been with you. And she's engaging in more sexual activity and fantasy with the partner that she's ever done with you. And suddenly it becomes, who is this person that I've lived with for 10 or 20 or 30 years? I have no idea. This person becomes a stranger. And that absolutely breaks people in half. That this other persona exists, which we didn't consciously develop. But getting online, this other person comes out of you. You're seduced into a space of comfort and privacy and absolute personal intimacy that you don't want to leave. What does it bode for us? Where do we go? So for me as a clinician, it's really about teaching couples how to negotiate around what's called sex tech. I have a beautiful section in the book at the end of it called the Netiquette Guideline, looking at how to negotiate your sex tech rules. So it's no longer just negotiating condoms, it's negotiating use of technology in your relationship and how each of you would define what cyber infidelity means to you. What does it mean to you? What you may define as cyber flirting, your other partner may not. How much of my Facebook can you see? Is that private or is that secret? When does it become infidelity? Those are things that have to be discussed today. And what does it really mean for our expectations around our relationships? What are we doing? I did my radio show last week on asexuality, and I've been working with a client, a couple, for a number of years, where he as a man is not interested in being sexual. I'm just going to talk louder. So
Thank you. So, so I've been seeing him for a number of years because he is not interested in being sexual with her. Now we know that in our society, a man should always be interested in being sexual with a woman, right? He's always supposed to have an erection, he's always supposed to have desire. So when there is what's called an anomaly, meaning that he's not interested in being sexual with her, she then brings him in for therapy because she thinks he's pathologically ill. There's something wrong with him, or there's something wrong with her. Once she hears there's nothing wrong with her, then he's the pathology. And we've got to fix him. We've got to get him to have sex because it's not allowed, it's not acceptable that a man should not want to have sex. We know that women don't want sex, right? And that's kind of acceptable, or it's been pathologized that way. But men have to want sex. So for years, I've been working with this man, trying to get to the root of what is going on with him. Why is it that he doesn't want sex? I've given up that because why should I be pushing the agenda around? The man doesn't want sex, he doesn't want sex. So my agenda with him is to learn how to manage living in a situation where this is the truth. He's not interested in being sexual, and she is interested in being sexual. So how do we manage the disparity between these two people? So she hears my radio show on asexuality, and she nails me last night, and she says to me, "I've just found it. He's asexual." And it's like, yes, indeed, he is asexual. And she says, "Well, my solution is not that I want to leave my marriage. I'm going to go for an open marriage." Now, where a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we have couples saying that that is my fallback position, I'm going to go for an open marriage. So watch this space, because that's where the contemporary intimacy part of my work is coming in. How are we going to be negotiating different forms of polyamory, loving more than one person at the same time, and looking at what we're doing online? Thank you for your attention, and please, my book is there. If there are any questions, please ask me, because I'm here. I don't have time. I kind of rushed through all this wonderful research because I'm aware of the time.
I think we can. Well, I'd like to kick off that. You know, we are all so interested in sex, and the moment that you kind of think you're just rowing a nice, not a nice thing, and somebody rocks you about big time. So this is fascinating. Very, very good. And I think all of us work with students, and we live, and the manner in which we live, we affect our students. How does it all add?
I just wanted to say as well that my work is now moving into looking at young people, because I've always done that. I've written a book on teenage sexuality, and now my interest is expanding into looking. In fact, my radio show on Friday hopefully is going to be looking at college campuses and looking at rape and sexual behavior. What's really going on sexually with young people who are incredibly confused. And this is very important. I hope you invite me back for that. A very important conversation about the sexuality of young people on campus. Looking at the hookup culture, the casual sex that brings with benefits, and how confusing and how murky this world has become for them, and their online lives as well. So I really hope I can come and bring some work to you around that.
Good colleagues, in view of the time at hand, I'm going to allow 3 questions if you don't mind.
Okay.
I see our DVC finance has raised his hand, and this is one man. This is then I'll go to the left of the house, and then I'll go to the right of the house. So,
I think you've answered my question. I have 2 young sons. That has to move in with as well. Which I think that's a daunting task for me to be able to assist them through that, to understand, from my own, and my wife's way of doing things into this new way.
Absolutely.
It's going to be to do.
Yeah. It's a wonderful observation. Back in the old days, maybe the old days is before pre-2012, whenever I used to talk any kind of help, sexual health conference, there would always be somebody who was saying to me, when do I begin educating my children about sexuality? So I developed a program called How to Raise Sexually Healthy Children. Now, with technology, you have an added burden of having this device in their hands and teaching, first of all, for you two to decide on your own sex check rules, because you're modeling. So it's about you two deciding that. And then creating, thank you so much, rules around mobile behavior for your children, around rules, around yourself, how much privacy, how much secrecy is never allowed, how much monitoring are you going to be doing around their behavior. So you're almost left with no choice, which I think is fantastic, that parents have got to sexually educate their children, because right now they have got porn in their hands, they have got information, they are vulnerable, they're at risk at any possible time
to be exposed to sexuality that you don't want them to be exposed to. Nobody wants their kids to be exposed to porn as a first-time sexual event. So you're forced to have to talk about sexuality with your children, and you're forced to actually you have to get in touch and understand technology, so you get into their world and learn what kind of rules, sex tech rules, you're going to have around their mobile use. And that most of all, they can come to you and they can communicate when they feel at risk, or you have to set rules for them. So you have to become technically sexually educated and technologically educated. It's a big ask of parents.
Well, Jacob, this reminds me of when I discovered one of my son's porn collection. And I have to admit that I was equally interested, but I mean... But as Jerry says, you know, you need to understand the scorpion in you, and if this thing goes, ding, that's the go. Let's go to my left of the house. A question from there, please. Can we have a short one? Let me see. Gentleman, the blonde gentleman over there.
When you talk about polyamorous relationships becoming more common, because of trend, obviously honesty in that kind of relationship, confiding and so on would be important, but it's quite difficult in the transition phase in our society.
So the difficulty is what, agreeing with your partner or agreeing in society around opening up
Even
everything?
with one's partner, the idea of
The idea
saying,
of opening up. Yeah, it is. It's an incredibly high-risk situation. You know, at this conference in Lisbon, I walked into the room and I thought, am I in the right place? Because I trained in San Francisco and I was there 22 years ago when the gay rights and the gay pride were just happening. And there, people were still incredibly marginalized. And there were people who were punked and tattooed. And I walked into this room now 22, 23 years later. I saw young people, I mean, I was really geriatric in comparison, with purple hair, pink hair, tattoos, looking very marginalized. I thought, really, this is not academic. I don't know if I want to be here. And there were like 4 days of this. And how am I going to get through this? This is not scientific. It was. I mean, there were a lot of great papers. This is a new movement. This is a birthing of a new movement. And people, unfortunately, start out marginalized and on the sidelines, having to have these difficult conversations. And this is why it was such an important meeting, which is why I wanted to be there, of breaking open a conversation that around behavior that we're doing, but we're doing it in an unregulated way, in a harmful way. And it's like saying we want policies. We want to be recognized. We do not want to think we want to have the same rights as monogamous people. We feel that we should also have open conversations where we can talk about these things, which therefore destigmatizes and therefore makes it safer for us to be able to talk about. It's very difficult to begin that conversation with the partner. You put yourself at risk. Rather that than risk cheating. You know, I stand as a therapist, and there's no greater pain for me as a therapist than working, besides abuse of women, of working with couples who have gone through infidelity, the pain of the secrecy. So yeah, there are wonderful books. Follow me. I'm like voraciously reading, I'm voraciously writing around looking at polyamory and how we can actually deal with it. Yeah, and of course, you know, with monogamy being another model. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to broach.
And the last question over here, I guess this is the youngest table in the house on my right-hand side. We have Professor Rensley, Chris Rensley over there. I see the professors are really interested in this conversation.
Well, look who was on Ashley Madison, huh? Look who was outed on Ashley Madison. Yeah.
Dr. Keith, maybe a question. You mentioned that over the last couple of decades that the women, that they've been emancipated, a lot more rights pushing and so on. So obviously, we know that women nowadays know what they want from a sexual point of view. Obviously entitled to have more, knowing what they want, what they deserve, what they need. Do you think that women are really open in terms of that with their husbands? That they got the openness to tell them, listen, we've been now married for 20 years, this is not working for me, I want to explore this. I've always had the view, if you're not going to be brutally honest, because the men, we are stupid, we haven't got,
I agree.
We can't sniff it out, so you've got to tell us literally, draw a little picture, listen, this is what I want. Do you think that women are open enough and pushing hard enough to get to that point and making men understand, listen.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of the message of my book as well, is that of all my work right now, is I take this wonderful hyper-personal communication that you're doing online, use these rich descriptive words and put them into your relationship. Feed them to your partner next to you. I just found this week these wonderful new emojis. I love emojis of beautiful vaginas. So, you know, send these emojis, use emojis, communicate online. That's a wonderful way to begin a conversation, which is kind of difficult, but you still have to end up face to face with each other. It is difficult. There's a high risk. Women still feel somewhat afraid and ashamed. We still sit to the culture of shame and blame and guilt for showing our sexuality. The fear of being slutted and reputation and management has to happen. There isn't that ability. I mean, that's what communication, where it falls down, and why it's so easy to go into technology. And where I'm saying we've got to take this richness where women are showing themselves and put it into your own bedroom. Yeah, I wish that they would do that.
Thank you very much.
Such
Let's
a pleasure.
give our
Thank you
guest
for having
speaker
me.
a hand of applause.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.